question about what does it actually mean to jobs. I think as Claudia and Angela mentioned, we know that there are significant challenges ahead of us economically, the health-wise. What does this mean to employment? What is the challenge on our education system? I think that's been well documented, and we obviously need to address that from a well-being, from an education, from many aspects of nutrition, as well as business community, and how they reskill and make sure as sectors get irreparably damaged, like maybe hospitality or transportation, our businesses change forever to be more digital online. How do we bring people along? How do we make them employable, whether it's for your organization or somewhere else? And there's an absolute huge role that policymakers in country and across the G20 can play a role there in terms of encouragement and encouraging disclosures. So we know there are challenges ahead. I also think it's important to understand, and Claudia, you mentioned this, what's been good and what we've learned and what surprised us about this pandemic. So we're talking about well-being and mental health across the world like we've never talked about it before. Talk is cheap and action speaks, but we're actually talking about well-being. We're talking about vulnerable cybersecurity populations. We're talking about how do you reskill the most vulnerable people in communities if the very nature of the jobs they perform have been changed because consumers cannot mass gather or do not want to engage in certain retail activities in certain ways. So we need to understand that there are, our children have been somewhat resilient to homeschool. We understand that there's digital divide and there isn't access around the world, but kind of understanding what has worked well will kind of put us in good stead in the future. And then my third point is, as we all know, there isn't a one size fits all for any G20 country. There are different starting points in terms of education. There are different starting points in terms of certain economies. Germany, for example, is very much product and goods and manufacturing driven. There are other areas of the world that are much more service sector that was driven. And so really understanding there's different starting points, there's different challenges around education, there's different challenges around different social economic situations. For the G20 to round this out is, as Paul Twomey said, pick a few things that they can collaborate on. What's been really good in the last couple of weeks is this concept of stakeholder capitalism has now actually been better defined at the World Economic Forum. A number of business leaders and academic institutions came together and said, we want to make disclosures about a number of factors, including people, in aspects of how do we reskill, how do we create employment, how do we think about the dignity, how do we think about the diversity of a business workforce? So there are some green shoots that we can talk through a bit more in the panel. Back to you, Paul.
Thank you, Bhushan.